to What the Hype, and I think it's fair to say we will waste no opportunity in this episode in recapping Season 2 of The Last of Us. I'm joined here by a really great crew. Honestly, I feel like you all have done the majority, more than the majority, I would say, of the instant recap episodes throughout the season. So even though I'll lead us through this discussion, I feel like I'm the guest here.
Well, Micah, I love that you had excitement about putting together the overall thoughts and run through document for this episode, and I love that you're taking a more active role in The Last of Us recapping here on What the Hype. So nice work.
Well, and I think it's also a benefit to us that, Micah, you're someone who has not played the second game.
Exactly.
And I think that really lends itself to probably some pretty pointed questions that you have about why things go the way they do in part 2 and where they might be going in season 3. So I think it's perfect timing. I'm glad for it.
That's definitely been something that has been very valuable when we have Pam and Micah on throughout this season, because I really don't know what it would be like to not know. So it's like both what's coming and also just like, I don't know. I'm excited for your thoughts on the season as a whole, because I know that I couldn't possibly have the same exact input and not any more input than you guys do. So that's a way of saying that.
So a quick level set here for those who are listening. You just mentioned that Pam and I have not played the game, but Eric, Laura, Chelsea, you all have played the game. So you have a little bit more insight in terms of where we are going as we wrap up season 2. And really, I think our best position to say whether or not you feel as if the show did a good job setting us up for season 3. And of course, we're going to talk a lot about that towards the tail end of the episode. I did just want to do a quick plug for the instant reaction videos that I mentioned earlier. There's a really awesome YouTube playlist of almost 20 videos at this point that listeners can go back and watch. So I did my due diligence. I stayed away from the spoilery one, but outside of that, it's a really great way to recap season 2 of The Last of Us.
Yeah, and especially once, 2 years from now, when season 3 is getting ready to come out, those will be great resources that'll still be there if you need to go back and get caught up on what happened.
Definitely. Well, Eric, will you do the honors of just a very quick recap of season 2? Set the table for us.
Absolutely. Micah, thank you for asking. So Joel dies, trips over his horse. It's a really fucking weird thing. And like, there's these clowns that come to Jackson. Oh, you meant real recap. Okay.
You saw a different version of season 2 than I did. I think.
That's true. There were no clowns, infected or otherwise, this season. Which, you know what? There's something right off the bat to be grateful for. All joking aside, these are spoilers, as we said. Abby murders Joel. And who's Abby? Well, maybe we get there eventually. The infected of this season plan a large attack, or they have a large attack on Jackson. It is a massive onslaught of Jackson's facilities at the exact same time that Joel is being attacked by this so-called Salt Lake crew led by Abby. We find out that the night prior, Joel finally kind of came clean with Ellie over the lie that's been eating up their relationship for the last 5 years between seasons 1 and 2. Months later, after recovering from the events of Joel's death, physically, but not emotionally, Dina, and Ellie travel safely to Seattle in order to take out Abby, and Ellie crucially does not reveal to Dina that she knows why Joel was killed, which may or may not have changed her mind. Dina reveals on the journey that she's pregnant, and they're come to realize that Seattle's real messed up. there are some existential threats, and additionally, just new types of threats on all sides, on Ellie and Dina in Seattle from WLF, which is the Washington Liberation Front, a group of paramilitary soldiers that overthrew Fedra in their jurisdiction, and a group called the Seraphites, who are also called the Scars, and they're real creepy. At the Seattle hospital, where Ellie goes to torture Nora for the whereabouts of Abby, we learn that there was a sort of ground zero outbreak on Outbreak Day, and there are secrets in the basement which we have not fully explored and might come back next season. Ellie does ultimately torture and kill Nora in a way that is very violent and reminiscent of how Joel died. And Ellie does actually keep killing then. She's on a revenge cycle. She also manages to kill Owen and Mel, as well as Mel's baby. At the end of the season, Abby confronts and fires her gun at Ellie and is confirmed via a flashback to be taking a more centered role in the upcoming season, despite actually a surprisingly little amount of appearance in season 2. Was that okay, guys?
That was great.
Yeah.
That was more than I could have hoped for, actually.
Pretty much captured it. Yeah.
So we can just stop recording. That is season 2 of The Last
You're welcome.
of Us.
Okay. All right.
We can all
Yeah, we don't have any
go home.
opinions, so bye, y'all.
I did want to go off of the ending of season 2, and I want to open up the floor here to get reactions. Most of us were on the reaction episode earlier this week. Pam, you were not. So I'll start with you. When Abby does fire the gun in Ellie's direction and it cuts to black, she delivers this really great line, "I let you live and you wasted it." Should that have been the end of season 2?
I mean, I feel like that's a really good cliffhanger because, you know, you could presume, I mean, like, I guess you could presume a couple of things from that, right? You could presume that Abby fires the gun and kills Ellie because, like, you know, like, we don't, as somebody who hasn't played the game at this point, you know, now they've killed Joel, it feels like anybody could die, right? You don't know if, like, Dina has hobbled her way over because she's still there and maybe she shoots first. That's a possibility that I could see. We don't know if her aim is not as good as it seems to be for whatever reason.
It's pretty good when
so
Jesse came through the door, I'll tell you that.
That's true. But oh my god, I'm forgetting his name. It's Joel's brother. He's still like on the floor. Like, yeah, I mean, it's possible that he could have like tugged her waist or something like that at some point, and maybe the gunshot ricochets. I don't know. I just feel like there's I feel like that's why they fade to black, because they don't want you to really know if Ellie's dead or not, right? So we're supposed to presume that it's possible that she's dead, but there's also a possibility she might not have made it. In that sense, I feel like it made for a really good ending, especially like because that's not really the end, right? It just like it resets, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but like as somebody who had no touchstone for what the season was really going to be beyond, you know, like the basic synopsis for the season, I just don't think I thought we were going to spend that much time in Seattle. Like, I really thought Seattle was going to be a pit stop and then we were going to move on or go back to Jackson. And so the fact that we spent like the majority of the season in Seattle, and then we will be spending presumably the majority, if not all, of next season in Seattle again, is crazy. But it makes sense because they also, like, there's so many questions that are left unanswered. We don't really know too much about WLF or the Seraphites, especially if you don't have context for the game. So if they're going to extrapolate on that, then there's a lot to play around with there. And we also don't know what Abby's been doing this whole time. So,
Chelsea, how about you?
I think it would have been a really great way to end it. I am coming around on the idea of putting the Abby surprise day one scene in the credits, or like after the credits, because it would have been a really great, like, holy crap, what just happened? Did they really just do that kind of ending? Almost like episode 2, the way it ended with Joel being killed, right? Like that's a holy crap, did they just kill their main character moment?
Oh.
And for them to echo that this time around in episode 7 and be like, holy crap, did they just kill Ellie too? That would have been a really great thing to make us ponder, and then give us that Marvel moment where the credits fade, and then we move on to get a glimpse of what's coming. But at least for that minute and a half of credits, we're just sitting there stewing in the possibility that our other main character from season 1 is dead.
But to go off of what you said, those 2 episodes are actually very similar, because Ellie wakes up at the end of episode 2, right? Or am I mistaking that for another episode?
I think she wakes up at the beginning of 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Well,
think
and at the end of
so.
2, I think Jessie shows up after she's kind of curled up with Joel on the ground, and they start the trek back to Jackson. I think that's how episode 2 ended, but correct me if I'm
that's
wrong.
right.
But to that point, I do think, hopefully we'll see this, especially as we get into season 3. I do think that they are trying to parallel Abby and Ellie in a lot of ways, including the kinds of shots they get of them. So there could be something to that like we're seeing similar framing around these shots of these characters waking up after the events of
I
something
remember
horrible.
what I'm thinking of now. Not Joel, Nora. She wakes up after she's beating Nora, and you're not sure what the outcome of that is. You presume that she's killed Nora. So Abby wakes up more or less in the same kind of capacity at the end of episode 7, after having supposedly shot Ellie.
Yeah.
So
I think that's
I
another
confused
great
I'm sorry.
comparison. No, but I think the example still stands, though. That, I really think they are trying to establish that Abby and Ellie, they mirror each other in a lot of ways.
And I do think that makes sense, even though we really, I know you all that have played the game have been saying that we really didn't get enough context for Abby at all, considering how important she is to the overall story. But I still think that there was enough context given as somebody that has no game background to understand that they're meant to be 2 sides of the same coin.
That's really good.
Because I picked
to
up
hear.
on that right away, especially if only for the revenge plot alone, and if you make the correlation of like Abby losing her biological father, then killing Ellie's chosen father, and resetting that cycle of anger and revenge, like that alone is, to me, is a parallel mirror image of each other.
Yeah, it's really good to know that felt as palpable for non-game players as it did for game players. I think that's a positive reflection on the way the season set that particular arc up.
Just to maybe wrap up the discussion on the ending of this season and the scene in particular, do we think that they even needed to include the establishment of Abby going to be taking on the star role for us to be with her as we head into season 3, going back to day 1 in Seattle? Or do we feel like that's something they could have just started at the beginning of season 3, where maybe it's a flashback to the scene in the theater, she fires the gun, and then she wakes up? Like, I'm just trying to think of ways where you could have just ended it on the gunshot, and then we're left wondering for, what'd you say, Laura, 2 years?
Yeah.
Unless we play the video game, of course.
Well, the one thing that pleased me about the very last scene of the episode was that I wasn't quite sure if the WLF in the football stadium was going to make it to TV. And I'm not talking about this season. I'm talking about it all, because earlier in the episode, they were in a Costco. And so I was like, wait a minute, are they just going to move the WLF to a Costco and not do the huge stadium? So at least I got that answered right
I
away.
saw that and
by
I was
the
like,
end of the episode.
yes,
I was
the
like,
land of
no.
Kirkland.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
of course it
Costco
would be
is
the
their
Costco.
Kirkland command center, but they still have the stadium. Okay, good. Because in the game, you can walk around and it's really neat to kind of see how things are set up there.
And I will just say, somebody that was like literally in Seattle during the time at which the season was airing, it is like just to see like what the game picked as far as like hubs and locations, that was like, oh yeah, that like actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh,
Like having that touchstone of like of being there, you know.
That's really cool.
So, because even like with Nora, like with after Ellie says that, she says like whale wheel, I was like, she's in the waterfront. Like, of course she is, because but like I wouldn't have known
Did
that
you
if I
go
hadn't
to the
just been
aquarium,
there.
Pam?
We did not do any museums while we were there this
Aw.
time, but the aquarium was very tempting because I love me a good aquarium. But the aquarium's right next to their version of the London Eye on the waterfront, and then the football
Did you ride
stadium
a
is actually not
motorboat?
too far away. So. Did I what? Did I ride a motorboat? Like no, I
To
did not
Scar
live out in
Island?
Ellie's. Yeah, exactly. I did go to Bainbridge Island, which I assume that's where the scars are now.
that's probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of islands off coast of
Did
Seattle.
you get
so.
capsized on your way over?
Yes.
Did you wake up in a precarious situation?
Yeah, and I forgot to tell you all of it because I suffered amnesia.
Well, you were saving it for this show.
Exactly.
That's
the
what you
grand
were
reveal.
saving it
Actually,
for.
Seattle is overrun,
Man.
and
No,
it's
you
a
know,
hellscape.
I actually think I was okay. I would be okay with the Abby Day 1 plug happening as like an after credit scene. Or even it could even be like a coming up in the, ahead of the making of the episode to kind of plug and get people excited for season 3. But I still maintain that we needed more Abby in this season in order for something like that to really hit and make people excited for it. And I know we're going to chat about that over the course of today's discussion, but that's how I feel. I'm fine with the scene. Wouldn't have made it the last scene. I want the gunshot and the go to black. It's like the perfect Sopranos ending. It's just
It
so
is a
shocking.
Sopranos ending. Yeah.
And I think it would have been perfect. But yeah, they could have moved Abby's WLF stadium introduction somewhere else.
It is reminiscent a bit of season 1 too, right? Because you had Joel and Ellie kind of looking out to Jackson as that was going to become their home base for the foreseeable future. You're meant, I would assume, as a viewer, to believe now that this is Abby's home base, right? So
I like that connection.
there's a little bit of that I picked up on.
So Pam, just getting back real quick to noticing and recognizing kind of your similar looking buildings in Seattle. Is it better than when The Last of Us season 1 did 30 miles west of Boston and they were in like the Canadian Rockies?
It is a little bit better. I will say that Seattle's the thing that is like a little more trippy is that Seattle's really hilly, kind of like San Francisco's really hilly, and obviously like most of what we see is them traipsing around on flat ground. So that was like the biggest kind of tell, and obviously some of like the building facades are like not quite accurate and stuff like that, but like overall, like the bigger shots, like the stadium, they did a good job recreating that, probably with the use of CGI and things like that. So I think they did just enough to kind of make it feel real to people that probably don't live there. And I get it too, because like it's like anytime your hometown is like featured, there's always like, it always looks like a little uncanny because you're like, that's not quite right. Or like for me, it's always the color of the Golden Gate Bridge. Like they can never get it quite right, so it looks a little weird. But
Agreed. Well, we are going to continue our analysis of season 2 of The Last of Us, but before we move on, we do need to take a quick break to hear some words from our sponsors, but we'll be right back after this.